So we're going to do a class on what basically Touche calls irregular attacks. His regular attacks are like what we did this morning, where we got like just the thrust in fourth, second high, second low, or preem low. Basically just those straight thrusts, glides, disengagement. Those are like what we would call maybe now like simple attacks now. He calls just like his regular attacks, like the bread and butter kind of stuff. Then he has a section on irregular attacks, and he lists a whole bunch of them. So I'm gonna list them all off. We're gonna try to go through almost all of them if I can. All right, I'm gonna list off. We're gonna go back to my notes. I'm gonna list off what all these irregular attacks are, and then we'll kind of go through them. We're not gonna go through them in the order he has them in the book. But what he has in here is voids or blow by voids. That's basically a Passata Soto, as he calls a blow by void, that really low lunge. The Flanconade, one of my favorites. The Botte Coupée, the Imbrocade, the same time thrust, the Renewal, the Redouble, the Riposte. For him, the Riposte is an irregular attack, which is kind of interesting. The Peasant Strike, that's a fun one. And then there's two that he didn't have listed here, but like they pop up in his books. I'm adding to this section anyways. Is false blows, which are basically angulated attacks around an opponent's parry or hard blade pressure. And vaulting, which is like this nice draught or a nice vault, another type of void and stuff. So we're going to try to get through most of these, if not all of these. The first one we're going to look at is the Flanconade. So the Flanconade is an attack where you hit your opponent in the flank on their outside line while engaging them on their inside. The Flanconade, we get different types of Flanconades throughout history, but this is basically what would be considered like a Flanconade of fourth if you do like any kind of like classical Italian type fencing and stuff like that. Bonnie, mind if I borrow you? So this is also, I really like this again. So there's a few different ways we can use this. Against anyone that keeps their hilt very high on their inside, it kind of exposes that our outside flank, right? If I'm right here, this exposes that. This is nice and open. So it's a good place to kind of like aim a shot. People that just keep their sword really high because maybe they just like to keep their sword high, or maybe they're much taller than you. Flanconades is a nice way of hitting the flank while still controlling their weapon. Because if I'm fighting Wendy, and she just goes for my flank without any blade control, I can still hit her, right? So the Flanconade is going to be a nice way of controlling my weapon where she can still access the low lines. And it's also good against opponents that have weak engagements. So if what blades up here, if I basically keep my points aimed at her center mass and just angle my sword, this is going to be a really nice opportunity for her to do a Flanconade into my flank. So we're going to look at all of these, and I'm going to kind of let you all play around with them with your partners. So I'm going to like show them like more complicated versions, simple to complicated, and let you all kind of play around with this as best you can. So I have one right across from me, right over here. So I'm going to do the Flanconade here. So Wendy's giving me a little bit of a higher guard here. So I've engaged strong on weak like we were doing earlier. But if I try to glide here, she can, just by the height of her hilt, she can deflect my blade. So this is going to be an easy parry for her. But I see that she's got that nice juicy flank open that I want to hit. So from this engagement, it's going to drop the tip, kind of my hand's like in fourth or in between third and fourth, aimed at her flank, and then just glide. And I want to quickly recover and regain control over a weapon. This has to be done quickly. If I go too slow, she can easily disengage out of it. I don't really have strong opposition, so she might be able to hit me. So I need to make sure when I do this, I'm taking the tempo, I'm being quick and swift about it, and that I'm kind of surprising Wendy with this action. So version 1, engage, drop tip, and glide. And then quick recover back. I can also do this off a parry. So I'm going to engage Wendy on the outside. She attacks my disengage. Lunge at me. I parry, and as she recovers back, recover, I can riposte with that Flanconade, especially if she goes really high on her recovery, especially because I know Wendy likes to do Fabris. Maybe instinctively she just goes high with her hilt while she recovers. I can kind of still glide to that low outside line on her flank. Option 3, if Wendy engages my blade by just moving the hilt and not moving her tip, so opposite, so yeah, right, so you're going to give me this weak angle. This is a weak angle engagement. I can easily just push down and hit her probably faster than she realizes what's happening, which is why when we get engagements, we want like strong on weak, but also crossing our point a little bit over their weapon creates a strong angle, right? If she gets a good engagement, give me a good strong engagement. I can't push her, but if she gives me a weak engagement, I can just blow right on through that. So classically, we call that like a force glide, and I can do that as this Flanconade of fourth and stuff. So those are your three options to kind of play around with. I'll give you like 5 to 6 minutes so you can kind of play around with this idea. But again, it's all from this engagement, the student's engagement of fourth, aiming for that low outside lying flank. Make sense? Any questions? Yeah, so like there are versions of this Flanconade where I can actually go all the way down into like other versions. This is just his version. This is like an early version of the Flanconade, yeah. No, it's a good question because like, because I do like classical Italian, we have 3 Flanconades. This is the basic Flanconade of fourth. I could also do a Flanconade of what the Italians call Flanconade of second, or I can do a Flanconade of first, or like a low fourth basically. But yeah, he just has this one version. But I love doing like, those like other Flanconades, so good. So good. Yeah, Flanconades feel like black magic. Yeah. So if you want to play around with that, by all means go for it. But yeah, Latouche shows this one version.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, no problem. Cool. Grab a powder, give that a go. Let me know if you get stuck. This is going to be a weird one, so if you haven't done these before, it can be a little funky. All right, bring it on in here. All right. So now we're gonna look at playing around how to defeat the Flanconade. There's a few ways we can do it. I'm gonna let people kind of like play around with some ideas, but we're gonna show one because one of our other irregular attacks I feel like is a counter to this, which is called the Imbrocade. I'm gonna read the quote that Latouche describes it because it's not technical writing or fencing back then. It was not stellar, and this is one of them. So this is my interpretation, what I'm about to show you of this. You read through the book, you might come up with other ideas. I'm kind of pulling from different sources to try to fill in the gaps because his description of this is not great. He says, quote, "The Imbrocade is a thrust that you push in the same position where the sword is located when you have parried by simply pushing it against the enemy without any movement of the wrist to the inside or the outside." Right, yeah, it's not great. So like, but we have other versions, sorry. It seems like a type of riposte, yeah. And we have like a few different like Imbrocade pops up in other fencing masters. Botte talks about the Imbrocade as it's an angulated attack in which the line of the sword doesn't intersect the body, right? If I do my normal lunge, my sword hilt just kind of intersects my body if I'm nice and straight, regardless if I'm in second and fourth, it's hitting the body. But if I start like doing these bank shots with or without opposition, no longer my sword doesn't intersect, my pommel doesn't intersect my body anymore. So maybe it's just any kind of like, I parry and I riposte by just pushing, right? But he talks about not really moving the wrists, so I don't know if that really fits. We also have the Imbrocade in classical Italian, which is basically like this counterattack against any glides to the low outside line. So that's the version I'm going to show you, but just realize I don't know 100% what the hell he's talking about here. Go home, read the book, come up with your own ideas, and let me know if I'm wrong, or if you come up with the better ideas and stuff. I do my best, but I am not perfect at any of this. So we're going to look at the Imbrocade. This is going to be a more Italian classical style, just to kind of get us practice this thing. But I want people playing around with their own ideas how to defeat the Flanconade when I send you out into the wild in a second to do this. So I'm going to borrow Wendy again. All right. So Wendy's going to engage my blade here, and she's going to go for the Flanconade of fourth, like we've just been doing. Boom, right? So that's what she's trying to do. I'm going to counter this by turning my hand into second, bring the arm back just a little bit to get some opposition, and then thrust right back at her. I like to do this with a little bit of a squat as well. So I keep my hilt, my forte, the strong part of my sword on her, the weak part of hers as best I can. I find that works really nicely. So she's going to engage. Right, I'm kind of sinking down. I get control over her weak, and then I drive it forward back into her stomach. So if you're much taller than your opponent, you're really going to probably have to like pop a squat here to get down low enough. You can do this as like a 1-2 parry riposte. You can kind of try to do it as a nice fluid in and out, almost kind of like a counter attack versus a parry riposte. which is one of my favorite versions of this. So she goes for it. Right, I'm kind of just turning my hand out, so it's outside my body here. It's not in line with my shoulder. I'm actually kicking my hand just outside the shoulder to kind of like keep my point back on line and like bank a shot here. Make sense? Cool. Try that. Play around with some parry riposts. Play around with some maybe other ideas of how you can defeat this Flanconade. But that's one you can kind of play around with because it's part of the irregular attacks. But you got some free will to play around with other ideas. Cool. Give that a go. Now we're going to look at the Botte Coupée. If you read Gerard, this is basically his court coupé. We're basically going to go from a feint high to the face, just dropping the tip and striking low in the belly, abdomen kind of area. Mind if I borrow you? Because you're right there. We're going to use you in a little bit. So how we're going to do this particular drill, it's going to be from the student's engagement in second. The coach is going to push against it. Student's going to feint by disengage high to the face, and then do the Botte Coupée. So we're going to walk through this nice and slow. So right across from me here. So I'll be a student here for this one. So I've engaged Amy. She pushes back. I'm going to feint high to the face. She's going to go for a parry 4. I just drop the tip and strike. I want to make sure I keep my hilt high because that's where her sword is. I want at least some kind of steel protect me here, which means this is kind of like a little bit of a lower. Instead of way up here like the earlier fourth by glide, I kind of want to sink down a little bit more for this one. And after I hit, re-engage on whatever line you want and recover on out. So the Botte Coupée is just a feint high and then dropping the tip. It's that like you're kind of cutting down and under, which is why I think like Gerard calls this like the court coupé. It's like a cut at fourth. The exact same action, just a slightly different name for it. So one more time. I engage, she pushes, feint high, and then once she goes for that parry, I strike underneath. And yeah, if I can get right here, I got my shot right underneath her arms. It kind of like made it almost hard for her to like do a counterattack because my blade was bending up into her elbow, which is kind of nice. I'm not really aiming for that on purpose, but if I can get that, it's a nice little accident. I'll take it. Keeps me safer. Sound good? Sure, absolutely. So I'll also show a simplified version if that's like too many steps for you. A simplified version of this is, give me an invitation in second across, yeah. I'll just feint her a face and then do my half disengage underneath. That's a simplified version of this drill. The more complicated version I just showed is I engage in second, she pushes back, I feint high, and then Botte Coupée. Good? Cool. Give that a try. Play around with it. All right. So now we're going to move on to faux blows or false blows. These he doesn't define, but it does. If you're reading the text, it pops up a couple of times, and you kind of have to like read between the lines of what it is. It's basically just a false edge attack around your opponent's blade. Right, so swords have a true edge and a false edge. True edge is the side where your knuckles, if you had a knuckle bow, that would be the side of your true edge. False edge is on the opposite side, or the back edge is another way of kind of looking at it. True edge is really good for locking out the opponent. So right, I can lock him out in fourth on the inside, second on the outside. But the false edge is really good for doing hook shots, right? It's really deceptive because I can kind of bank my hand and really kind of angulate my attacks and stuff. So it's kind of like cart over the arm, has a little bit of that false edge kind of feel to it. And then we also have second on the inside. So we're going to look at the concept of this, and then we'll kind of play around with the idea here. I'll borrow Wendy. So one step here, closer forward. So the general idea here is if she starts to push on my blade here in fourth, instead of trying to push back or disengaging, I can keep this contact and just turn my hand into second, angle my point back at her body, and I can finish my glide. I don't have opposition, so I need to be on the ball, hit, get on out, right? I don't want to just pose here and be like, hey, Tim, you get that photo? Cool shot, right? I want to hit, get on out, then ask if you got that on video, because that's going to go on TikTok. But like, what's nice about this is because I'm keeping the blade contact, she doesn't get the visual of me leaving her blade, right? If she pushes my blade and I disengage, she might be ready for that straight thrust that we did earlier. If I push back, she might be ready for her own disengagement back. right? Because there's a sensation of the blades touching and detaching, and also the visual. But here, there's not much changing visually, a little bit visually, not much sensationally on the blade. So she pushes. I can just angle the shot, hit, and then recover on back. So on the inside line, we're going to use second. I'm kicking my hand outside of my body, and I angle it as much as I need. The hand sticks out as much as I need. Fourth, on the outside out, we would use fourth. I'm kind of angulating, almost like that cart over the arm, that classic French small sword kind of action. 1 second. So thing out here, if I engage, she pushes. I can just angulate here, strike with the lunge, and recover on back. So we're basically using false edges to hook around our opponent's shot. And we can use this in a whole bunch of different tactics or situations. But we're just going to use this as a simple drill of, so give me on guard. I engage, she pushes back. And as I feel a push, that's my cue to go. So from the student's engagement, when you feel your partner push on your blade, then turn your hand into the false edge to strike around for the false blow. You had a question?
Yeah, against the lefty, how would that?
Ooh, good. Tim, since you're right there, I got a lefty right here. So these things I feel like sometimes can be a little bit more, I can still do this. So I can still do this, right? So if I can, he has to push back, I'll hit. I might turn my hand more into first, just to kind of really get extra angulation and downward here. This is really dangerous because his sword is super free to also hit me in a whole bunch of mean spots. And same thing over here on my outside. If he pushes back, I can still kind of do that angulated shot. So it's all from your perspective as the student and not necessarily the coach. So your inside's always your inside, your outside's always your outside. That was a good question. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so when I'm doing these as like a little pedagogy, if I'm doing this as like option drills here, I like to teach my students about feeling where the pressure is on their blade. So when he's got engagement with my blade, if I push into her forte, she should just extend and hit me. Boom, right? She engaged my blade. If I push under a déballé, she should just disengage. If I push into the middle of her sword, which is a very gray nebulous area, this is when she can maybe do that false edge. False edge. Yeah. You do the cool false edge now, right? So you engage, I push, she can kind of bank that shot around. There's a lot of like, you can intermix one from the other, but that's how I like to teach each one of those actions and stuff. But yeah, we kind of need a little bit of mutations of like of blade actions and in angles and stuff. Yeah. Next up is going to be the same time thrust. This is a time thrust and more like classical modern kind of fencing. Basically, as my opponent attacks me, I'm going to close off the opposite line and hit them at the same time. Touche says this is really dangerous because you're not really you're kind of defending yourself. This is very much a counterattack. So if your opposition isn't perfect, at best you both just hit hills to each other. No one dies. Most likely you're both probably gonna die at the same time. The same time thrust. So it's like a time thrust in more classical speak. So if I borrow Wendy here, the key here is I need to make sure that I'm leading with my point in having my true edge or my forte following her déballé. So I'm always kind of dominating it as we go. So if I engage her in fourth and she attacks by disengage, boom, right, that's what she's trying to do. We'll do that with the lunge. I'll be a little bit closer for you. So she attacks with the lunge. That's what she's trying to do with her attack as the coach. I'm going to basically lock her out in high second, and hopefully I do this correctly. So she kind of slipped through and hit me, right? This is one of the dangers that it's easy to kind of bounce on off and stuff. But if we go nice and slow, go a bit slow here. Boom, so as she finished, she's basically lunging onto my point. I'm not also lunging at her. I'm more likely to miss, I feel like, if we're both kind of lunging at each other. So I'm really trying to do this from stance. Touche doesn't say what to do with footwork. This is just my own experience with this. If I am much taller than Wendy and she's doing the same time thrust, she might need to also lunge. But we're close enough in height, or I'm a little bit taller than her, that as the one doing this action, I don't need to like lunge at her. That's just making my job tougher. I can just hang out in stance. So she attacks by disengage. Yeah, go high. Go for the disengage. Hit me. Yeah. So the coach needs to do a committed attack here. Boom. There you go. Good. Right, I'm just dominating her blade and hitting her. So it's almost like I'm doing the parry and the riposte all in one action. So I'm just moving my hilt forward, getting that crossing, getting domination of strong on weak, and extending my blade at the same time. This works on both lines. Going from inside to outside lines, easier. Going outside to inside line, much more of a trash fire. But play around with both. Start off going from your inside as the student to your outside. And then lefty versus righty might actually differ, kind of like see what you guys like better. But start off with inside to outside, and then go to outside to inside after and see how that works. Sound good? Cool. Yeah, you want to say one more time? Sure. Wendy, one more time. So I'll be student, she'll be coach. She attacks. Yeah, oh, you did a bank shot. Do a nice close second here, right? So there's a whole bunch of ways this can go wrong, which is why he doesn't like this, and you need to really know your opponent here. So she's attacking here, two edge. Right, so it's not a parry or post. I'm really just kind of attacking into her attack. Yeah, but you can see there's so many ways that it can go wrong, which is why he's not a big fan of this thing. But play around with it, see how it works, see how it can go wrong very easily, because it's going to. Cool. All right, next action we're going to look at is called the Renewal. This is basically, after I've been parried, I just do a second attack from stance. So it's basically a remise, or an imputata for the classical Italian fencers here. So after I've been parried, I do a second attack before my opponent riposts, or at the same time they start to riposte while I stay in the lunge. So it's a little bit different. It's kind of like a renewed attack, but it's kind of like pulled out a little bit for various reasons. So I'll borrow Wendy again. We can do this on both lines. We're going to go nice and slow. I'll be the student here. So Wendy's going to engage my blade here in second, the high outside line. I'm going to lunge. She's going to parry fourth. And then from here, as she starts to get ready to riposte, I'm just going to free my blade and do another strike. I might even go a little bit low. I could even do that as a Botte Coupée like that one. But after she's parried me, she's getting ready for her riposte. I kind of just get underneath. So this one can be a little bit tough depending on if your opponent keeps everything really low. This can be really tough. Again, the blade ends up getting free. But Latouche is showing everything nice and high, right? Everything is at shoulder height. He's not really down here in gunslinger land. So she engages, I attack, parry, and as she goes for the riposte, strike underneath. Opposite line, so if she engages me here on the inside, I attack, she parries second, as she goes for the riposte. This one I might need to do almost like as a void, because that riposte is coming probably towards my face and stuff. So I need to get really super low on that one. Inside line, I can kind of play around with the hilt height a little bit. So the drill is from the coach's engagement, attack by disengagement, and then renewal. Do a second hit. Have you engage me here outside second, so attack, boom. Right, so there's a brief pause to see what's happening, and then I go again. It's not a bam, bam, hit, and then a second hit. Maybe she's a little bit slow on her riposte. She's really fast with the riposte. I probably want to take more counter parry at that point. But if I can move before she riposts, there's an opportunity where I can hit them. So this is a tactical decision based on, am I faster than my opponent? Is she slow on her riposte? She's faster than me on her riposte. You're gonna die trying to do this. So there's tactical elements that you need to keep in mind when doing this too. Yeah, so it's a good thing. And one thing I forgot to mention, but I saw people to do it anyway, so good job, people. Was that when you do the renewal, you can just disengage to the opposite line too to kind of also get that opposition, right? So if I just walk through this with here, so like you've engaged me and I attack and you parry, if I don't have room low because he's got his hand a bit low, I can just do my renewal to the opposite line and I can still kind of like get opposition that way, right? So there's a few ways you can do it, like go high-low is a nice way if everything's high, but I can just disengage and go back to the high line on the opposite side if I need to. You sometimes can need to pull back your weight a little bit, so you can always get a little bit of an appel on there, which helps the judges realize that, oh, you did a second attack, right? Like, make the judge's life a little bit easier. Latouche doesn't talk about doing the appel with that. That's just kind of like other systems talk about doing these renewals with a little bit of an appel to help accentuate the second attack, because otherwise it might just look like you're just this. Right. The judge might not realize you've done that tiny little disengage. That little footwork adds a little bit of audio cue to help the judges and stuff like that. Doesn't work great on grass, but on brick works pretty good and stuff. So next action is going to be the redouble. It's basically from my lunge that's been parried, I recover forward with the back foot and then do a second lunge. He doesn't say if you strike on the same line, the opposite line, if you should do feints or not. So I'm going to show a couple of different variations and let you all kind of play around with this. I'll borrow you because you're right there. Sure. You will need to start further away and need a little bit more room to kind of move because you are like recovering forward here. So if he engages me here on the outside line, I'm going to attack with a disengage. He's going to parry with a retreat, but he freezes. But I'm too far away to hit him with the renewal, so I need to recover with my back foot, and then I can just finish with my attack there on the outside line. So if he parries me on the inside, I'll disengage back to the outside line while doing the recovery of my back foot. That happens at the same time. So once that back foot lands, I can lunge. So from here, it's parried, recover, go. It's quick, it's explosive. That's a very simple version where I just do a simple disengage, right? I'll do that one more time, nice and smooth. Oh, I kind of slid. Sorry. That's okay, you're good. So like, really quick, that's a nice simple version. If I think he's going to be very big on parries here, I can do that with a feint. So if we walk through this one, I can attack, he parries with retreat. I can feint with my recovery of the back foot and then disengage back in. So it'd be from attack by disengagement, gets parried, feint by disengagement with a recovery, and then disengagement for the final strike. Right, so those are a couple of options to play with. But the idea of the redouble is I've been parried and I need to now recover forward to hit an opposite line. Sorry. No, you're good, you're good. Yeah, whatever target I see is open and stuff like that. Sound good? Cool. Play around with that. Again, you need more room to start further away. So Touche also has what's called the Peasant Strike. It's like the end of his irregular attacks, kind of moving a little bit out of order here. He just calls it basically your opponent takes their sword in two hands, beats at your blade, then attacks you. He doesn't say where your offhand, where that second hand should be. Am I like holding it like it's a baseball bat? That's possibly one interpretation of it. Another version that I also like is we see it in earlier like rapier, like late rapier, early transitional rapier sources is basically like this pops up in Pasha. Pasha calls it the guard on the knee or guard of the knee, in which you're holding, your offhand holds the forte, and you kind of like, it's almost like a longsword guard in some kind of ways, and you create this like single invitation either over the sword or over your off arm. So these are the two interpretations that I have for this Peasant Strike in terms of you play around with like you're holding this a baseball bat or this guard on the knee. Either way, your opponent's going to try to whack your blade out of the way and then hit you. So we're going to look at the actual attack that he doesn't like, and then we'll look at potential counters to this, which can get really kind of fun and stuff. So I'll borrow Wendy. I'm going to be the peasant here with this Peasant Strike against Wendy, who has no idea what's about to happen to her. So Wendy's on guard. I'm right here. What he basically says, the Peasant Strike is they beat your blade hard out of the way, and then they keep both hands on their blade when they throw an attack. So longsword, do you guys do longsword over this corner? All right, so you guys might do, this is Peasant Strike, this is all for you guys right here. All right, so it's just beat the blade and then lunge and hit before they can get that blade back online. It works like a normal beat attack, but you're doing it with two hands. Yeah, it's much stronger because I got two hands, so I can really kind of whack your sword. I could possibly beat your blade hard enough to knock it out of your hand. I don't want to do that. I don't want to ruin your sword on the brick, but I could possibly do that. The other version is this guard on the knee. Same kind of thing. If I can get close, if you give me a point a little bit higher, if I get close enough, I can just, sorry, let's go over here so we're not whacking into this. I can just beat the blade out of the way, and I can do a passing lunge. I can lunge. I basically turn this into like a bayonet. I beat, and then I bayonet my training partner or opponent here. Another thing that this does is this is an invitation for Wendy to throw a shot to my high outside line here. I just do a beat parry and then I can attack. Yeah, that's one of the ways we'll look at like defeated is like feints and stuff. So try this idea. play around with Peasant Strikes with like a baseball bat, do this guard on the knee, and just have fun. Just kind of play around with it, see kind of what weird kind of stuff you can do with it, and then we'll look at countering it afterwards. Like, it pops up in the mid 17th century. Like, for some reason this comes up because like Charles Besnard writes about this, Pasha writes about this, Lange writes about this. They all hate it. They're all like, this is, especially this version, I don't know about this, but like this version, they're like, this is dumb, don't ever do this. Only do this if your arm's really tired, or like your sword arm's been injured in a duel and you can't hold up your sword anymore, and this is your only option other than dying and stuff like that. Yeah, so but like mid 17th century, enough people were fighting like this that like 4 different fencing masters have to like talk about this and be like, hey, this is stupid and here's why kind of thing. But now I want to play around with counters to this thing because everything has a counter, and this is just weird enough that I want people to really play around with this like guard on the knee version. So the coach is going to do this, and I just want you to do some like slow free play where as a student you're trying to figure out ways of defeating this person that's got this invitation and is trying to just like knock your blade out of the way with 2 hands and then dive bomb you in. Right, so this is super loosey-goosey, this is experimental time, playing in the sandbox. Yeah, so like the attacks is basically just hit and then they say you go kind of forward. They don't really talk about different heights and stuff. I usually go a little bit lower because I want some kind of opposition. This exposes my rib cage to my opponent maybe hitting me. Yeah, but like play around with it, right? Like the idea is this is a fence is doing this, maybe doesn't really know how to fence, which is why maybe they're doing this. So do weird bullshit from this. And as the student, your job is how do you deal with the weird bullshit that your coach is throwing at you. So play around with this, but go slow. Go like half speed, 3/4 speed, free play here, and then we'll move on to some more normal stuff. All right, we're gonna look at the blow by voice. We're gonna skip riposte because we've done a bunch of riposte earlier. Just know that like riposte can be anything, right? I can riposte by the Flanconade. I can riposte with a Redouble. I can riposte with a Renewed. I guess I can riposte. Yeah, I can riposte with this Peasant Strike, right? If I do a beat parry, I can riposte with that. So when you go home, you can try all these irregular attacks as riposte just to kind of play around and see what kind of weird fun combos you can come up with. We're going to get into 2 voids here. So we're going to look at the blow by void, which is basically a passata sotto, and then we'll look at the Volte or the girata for my Italian friends here. All right, I'll borrow Wendy here. So we're going to look at, so this one, if you can't get super low, do the best you can, or you can take an extended break. This is all good. At the end of the day, people are tired. You know, be kind of smart here. But I'm going to engage Wendy here on the inside. She's going to do a disengage attack, and she's trying to aim high at me. Boom, right? She's going really high. I could do a parry riposte, but maybe I want to be fancy, or maybe her timing of the attack is so good that she's attacking by disengage while I'm stepping forward here, right? Boom, right? So she's got really good timing. I might not have as much reaction time to land that parry, so I kind of need to drop under the horizon as best I can to hit her here. So as I step in, engage, she's going to do a disengage my attack. I'm just disengaging underneath and striking. Like he shows us in a few different ways. Sometimes he's really low here. Sometimes it's a little bit more sideways. Whatever you need to do to get underneath the hilt and not get hit by the sword, I think matters more than mimicking the plate as best you can. Because she's attacking my outside line, I like to get my hand into prima here, or first, so knuckles up, just to get a little bit of opposition, so she can't just get a cheap blow at me. The key here is I need to know that she's doing a committed attack, right? If she's very wishy-washy, not really committed to the attack, what she can do is she can do a feint. I go for this attack, and yeah, she can counterattack. She can parry riposte. She can do a whole bunch of nasty stuff. So this is against someone who's really committed to that attack high outside line against you. Sound good? Yeah. Cool. So it's going from the student's engagement, a fourth. Coach attacks by disengagement to the high outside line. Student, you do this blow by void. Just drop to the horizon as low as you can. So coaches, if you need to, you can just do these attacks more upright with an advance just to give more space for your training partner to get underneath the hilt. If you got someone who's got a little bit better hip mobility, you can actually do the lunge where you have to make them work harder to get underneath your hilt, right? So talk to your training partner about what level of difficulty they need to get the practice here. Cool? Give that a go. So one little pedagogy note, as the coach, because I know my students got to do this Passata Soto, or this like blow by void, is that I still need to be committed to the bit that I'm attacking to the high outside line, and not cheat and be like, right, if they go too early, then maybe I can do that as a coaching note of like, hey, you're cheating. I can see you leaning and you're getting ready to fall over. You're telegraphing. But if they're doing it perfect time, don't like cheat your student and like follow them, right? You're committed to this attack. You think you're landing that high outside line attack. But if I'm doing this with Wendy and she's cheating, she's going too early, right? Right, like if I'm right here, she's got me engaged here and I feel like she's falling over too early, then I can maybe like remind her and stuff. But she's doing everything good. I don't want to like give her bad feedback by like going up high and then going low. Because this idea is this is used against someone who's trying to drive this sword all the way to the hilt through you. They're dedicated to this shot. They think they're going to land this shot, win the gold medal and stuff. They're committed to it. If they're wishy-washy, where they have time to do this tip drop, not the action you want to do against them on that one, right? So that's a little tactical thing. And another thing to keep in mind when you go home and train this with back at your home school of how you can, if things go weird like that, like how you can kind of like self-diagnose. Right, we're going to look at the Volte, and then we'll get into some of what this hour was, 45 minutes was supposed to be. We're going to look at the Volte, which is basically the Volte or the girata. It's a turning of the body to basically, if you're a righty, you go in counterclockwise. If you're a lefty, you go in clockwise. So I'm moving my back foot. It's a passing step where I'm moving it behind my front foot. He shows it where the back is completely turned. There are variations. I only want to move my back foot as much as I need to void my opponent's blade and hit them. I don't want to do this so big, dedicated to the aesthetics that like I blast Wendy into next week and hurt her or break my blade. So if you're doing this and you just need to do like more of a sideways step, to me that's still a Volte, right? That's still a Volte. You're still a girata. You're still voiding the attack, and that's what we're really looking for here and stuff. So we're gonna look at two different setups, and I'll let you kind of play around with both of them and see which ones you like. First one is going to be, let's come this way so I have a little bit more room. I'm going to engage Wendy here on the outside. She's doing a attack by disengagement to my inside line, right? So she's trying to hit me with a disengagement in fourth. And if I do this correctly, I should land the Volte. Right? So like, again, this comes down to the coach needs to be dedicated to like not following. If I go too early, yeah, she can totally follow me with the point, but she's dedicated to hitting me here in fourth. Boom, right? She's trying to do that every time as the coach. So I get good feedback here, so she attacks. Boom. Right, I'm trying to get past the point where she can't easily just follow me and stuff as well. So that's one version of it. It's from my engagement on the outside. She's disengaging to the inside. Another version is she engages me on the outside, and she's just trying to hit me with a glide in second on the high outside line. Boom. That's what she's doing on this version. As she does for that, I'm going to do a half disengage into the Volte. Throwing that arm nice and behind as best you can and stuff. This is especially good. She really likes to push on my blade while gliding, right? She's really strong on the blade, like really pushing. I can kind of use that to my advantage here, where she pushes. Oh, sorry, let's reset. As she pushes, I can kind of just let her blade go away from my body and stuff. So that version is really good against really strong opponents who really just want to muscle your blade out of the way. Just like, sure, you want that line? Go for it. I'll just disengage around it. Yeah, so I'm trying to, my target on both of these is I like to do this with my point a little bit lower than my hilt. So I'm kind of hitting her more the stomach or the abdomen. I can go, if I go all the way high, there's a lot of space where she can come underneath and hit me. If I create this little bit of an angle, if I hit her, I have some steel that's kind of in the way. I'm not reaching for her sword. I don't care about opposition, but I want steel in the way in case she tries to counterattack or do like an afterblow. Boom, so here the attack comes. Yeah, sure, we'll do that one. Sorry. We'll do the glide. My brain's also getting fried here too. Yeah. Boom. Right, so I want a little bit of an angle here, just to kind of help. I'm still aiming more for like her belly and stomach. I'm not going super straight. I like to do this with a little bit of an angle. But in the moment, I'm just freeing my blade and hitting her. I'm not worrying about super perfection at that point. That answer the question? Okay.